All right, so this is a continuation. Having offered our obeisance to the lotus feet of our beloved gurus, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, and the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, our Guru Parampara, we're going to continue the Sri Caitanya Siksamrta by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Yesterday, we left off after hearing about, we're beginning to understand and study the nature of Madura Rasa. We've read 2 days into that. And yesterday we were hearing about the alambana, that is the foundation, the object of that mood of prema in Madura Rasa, which Sri Krishna, and the reservoir of that, the devotees, Srimati Radhika, and all those who are from her. Everyone is from her. And then we heard about Shuddha Sattva, right? The nature of the pure existence of the soul, and the distinction between that and material sattva, and then how to awaken that Shuddha Sattva. How does that come into the heart and awaken our identity, our purpose, our very being, right? And then we left off, the last thing we read was that Krishna, as the object of love for all, and especially because we're talking about Madura Rasa here, as the object of love in Madura Rasa, he manifests himself as 4 types of heroes or nayaks: Dhirodatta, Dhira Lalita, Dhira Shanta, and Dhirodhata. And within that, he can be either a husband or a lover. In Dwarka, he's a husband. And in Vrindavan, he's a lover. And we're going to hear today about that mood of love in Vrindavan, that parakiya rasa. But first, I'm going to read from Srila Rupa Goswami and his description of these 4 kinds of heroes. Right? And from his Ujjvala Nilamani, he writes, Purvokta Dhirodata. Oh wait, this is a very difficult verse, and my glasses are not working, so I'm just going to read the English. The 4 aspects of Lord Krishna's personality, Dhirodatta, Dhira Lalita, Dhira Shanta, and Dhirodhata, have been described in the previous book. 2 other aspects of his personality, Pati, husband, and Upapati, paramour, are very famous. Okay, so this is 2 aspects of that role as beloved. Now, he's going to explain Dhirodhata. Gambhiro Vinaye Shanta Karuna Sudhitavrata Akattano Gudha Garvo Dhirodhata Susattva Brit. A Dhirodhata is a person who is naturally very grave, gentle, forgiving, merciful, determined, humble, highly qualified, chivalrous, and physically attractive. These are the main characteristics of a Dhirodhata. This is Krishna in that mood. So you think about that. Different pastimes, different dealings with his devotees, how he manifests these qualities of gravity, gentleness, forgiving, merciful. Remember how he was with both Indra and Lord Brahma when they had committed their mistakes, their offenses towards him. Lord Brahma stealing the cowherd boys from the calves, Lord Indra trying to destroy Vrindavan. But Krishna dealt with them. He was grave, but he was also very gentle and forgiving and merciful. Determined, humble, highly qualified, chivalrous, and physically attractive. Right? He is very determined. Even from a small child, whatever he set his mind to, Even if he was incapable, he would keep trying, right? Trying to lift his father's heavy stool, right, and bring it to him. Couldn't do it. And slapping his arms like a wrestler, determined to do so. Or when he wanted to be with his friends, pulling the mortar, right, from the room, dragging it to be outside with his friends. Humble in his dealings with his parents, even with his friends. And also, these qualities and expressions, they reach their peak with the gopis in all of their dealings. And sometimes Krishna, in order to pacify Radhika's moods of anger towards him, will take his pitambar and put around his neck in a submissive way, hold his ears, beg forgiveness, even bow down, plead with her associates, right? Highly qualified in whatever he wants to do, singing, dancing, playing his flute, decorating Srimati Radhika, decorating a kunja to receive her. He can do all these arts. He's expert. Chivalrous, certainly so. Chivalrous in his moods of bravery and protection towards all the devotees, but especially towards the gopis. Such attractive quality to stir the heart of any beloved, yes? So, then there's Vidagdo Navatarunya Parihasa Visarada Nischinto Dira Lalita Syat Praya Prayasi Vasha. A person is called Dira Lalita when he is naturally very funny, always in full youthfulness, expert in joking, and free from all anxieties. Such a Dira Lalita personality is generally found to be very submissive to his lover. And Krishna is very submissive to Srimati Radhika. Although sometimes he will show these other qualities to challenge them and to excite their determination to experience ras and pastimes with him in different ways. But these are beautiful qualities, are they not? Very funny. Full youthfulness. Yes, Krishna's full youth, full-blown youth. Expert in joking. Who can joke better than Krishna? Maybe Radhika. They're both very expert at teasing one another. And free from all anxieties. Yes, Krishna's free from all anxieties because, why? He's a prince. In Dwarka, he's the king. And so many responsibilities are on his head, right? Defending the city, dealing with this disturbance. All of this Brahmana's sons have all disappeared. What to do? So many duties. But in Vrindavan, Nanda Maharaj and his brothers, they're in charge of everything. Krishna goes out and plays every day with the cows and with his friends. He doesn't have any anxiety. Sometimes a little bit. Where'd my friends go? Right? Did somebody take them? Oh, Lord Brahma took them. But not much anxiety. Oh, why are the gopis? Where have they gone? Oh, Radhika, she's not allowed out. Jatila is keeping her in the house. Some anxiety, but that simply stimulates prema. And mostly he's free from anxieties. But remember, these qualities, some of them are opposed to one another, but they all exist simultaneously within him. And sometimes one quality will become manifest, or another, or many altogether. But generally, it's Vrindavan. What is there? Vaikuntha itself means free from anxiety. So, Dira Lalita, submissive to his lover, funny, joking, free from anxiety, full youthfulness. Then, Shama Prakritika Klesha Sahanas Chavivik Chaka Vinayari Ganopeto Dirashanta Udiryate. A person who is very peaceful, forbearing, considerate, and obliging is called Dirapashanta. An expert quality for a beloved, yeah? Peaceful. no anxiety, right? Forbearing, considerate, and obliging. Krishna is so considerate of the needs of his beloveds. And also all these qualities, they also are interacting with his parents, with his friends. And in fact, sometimes when he's exhibiting these different kinds of qualities, he's amidst his friends. And where the gopis, they may be nearby. They may be witnessing this. And sometimes Krishna is doing these things with his friends, indicating that to the gopis who he knows are watching, that actually I want to be like this with you. And so he may walk by with his arm on the shoulder of a friend, giving a sidelong glance to the gopis, indicating, I want to hold you in this same way. Right? Twirling a lotus, pastime lotus. My heart is churning with love for you. Your heart is churning with love for me. I want to engage in loving pastimes. So, then the last, Maiso yavan ahankari mayavi roshanaschala vikantascha vivadibir dirodata udarata. A person who is very envious, proud, easily angered, restless, and complacent is called dirodhata by learned scholars. So sometimes Krishna shows those qualities, his proud, anger, restless. He may act like that in front of the gopis. And with someone like Chandravali, she becomes very submissive. And this creates an eagerness in her, right, to serve him in her own mood. But when he exhibits these qualities to Radhika, what does she do? She immediately rejects him and makes him become submissive. Makes him go from one kind of lover, from Dirodhata to Diralalita, very submissive. So all these moods, all these qualities, they're constantly manifesting in endless varieties of ways. We read about them, can't really understand them so much, but reading about them, we get some hints, some idea, some remembrance of this pastime or that pastime, and our heart is becoming churned and purified by this, awakened. So now let's begin hearing about parakiya ras. So, back to, now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is using his own Jaiva Dharma, that 31st chapter, and Vijay Kumar is speaking to his Gurudev, Gopal Guru. O Prabhu, what is meant by husband, pati, and paramour lover, upapati, in regard to Krishna? Goswami answers, spiritual affairs are like confidential jewels, but among them all, this parakiya Madura Ras is like the Kaustuba Mani, the crest jewel of all other gems. No rasa whatsoever appears if one conceives of the absolute truth as impersonal and worships it in an impersonal manner. Right, so people will talk about love, right? And there's so many people that are trying to practice spirituality nowadays. And they talk about love, but the majority of people who are aspiring for spirituality are not awakened to the beauty and the reality of the personal form of God, and they worship an impersonal form. And yet they talk of love. But love can't be experienced unless there is a lover and a beloved, and love itself. We're studying it in these different aspects, right? Rasa has all these different components to it, and they are absolutely dependent upon the object of love, the Vishaya, the reservoir, the person who has that love and directs it, different stimulus environment that stimulates love, right? Like Vrindavan is the Udipan, it's the dramatic stage. And then the different essential emotions. internal emotions and how they express themselves externally in varieties of service. So the impersonal conception, it completely inhibits any real love. So the only love that they can actually experience is the vitiated or perverted form of love in this world. Incomplete, misdirected, and covered love. The quality, the aspiration of the soul is love. Absolutely. And as long as you have the impersonal conception of the absolute, the only way that you'll be able to taste any love at all is if it's directed into the conditioned state. So impersonalists, they can never be satisfied, because you can't be satisfied in impersonal realization, because it's free from the anxieties of the material world, but there's no awakening of the beauty and joy of spiritual existence. And as long as they stay on the mundane plane, their experience will be, again, vitiated, incomplete, imperfectly experienced, and a block or a check for the so-called spirituality that they're aspiring for. So the opportunity to awaken to the beauty and variety of the true spiritual realm, this is the gift of Mahaprabhu. So Goswami Maharaj goes on. So he said, I'll reread that, spiritual affairs are like confidential jewels, but among them all, this parakiya ras is like the Kaustuba mani, the crest jewel of all other gems. No rasa whatsoever appears if one conceives of the absolute truth as impersonal and worships it in an impersonal manner. This process denies the validity of Vedic statements such as raso vaisaha. That supreme absolute truth is the personification of all ras. Again, Chandogya Upanishad. Remember, we heard that very substantial verse from the Chandogya Upanishad before, talking about Krishna, Shama, the personality of Godhead and his qualities. So, Raso Vaisaha, Chandogya Upanishad, 8.13.1. Impersonalism is useless because of its almost complete lack of bliss. Compared to impersonalism, devotional sentiments are infinitely superior. Secondly, the experience of ras develops progressively in accordance to the degree of devotional feelings invoked towards the personal form of the Lord. Rasa tattva should be considered to be the main tattva. Reverential moods manifested towards the Lord in dasya ras are higher than the Ishvara bhav of shanta ras. Sakya bhav is more elevated than dasya bhav. Vatsalya bhav is still more superior, and Madura Ras is the topmost of all. Just as we see a gradation among these sentiments, each being better than the previous one, similarly, parakiya Madura Ras is superior to svakiya Madura Ras. So the love of the gopis is superior to the love of the queens, even the queens, it's such a high position. And they are, in fact, expansions from Srimati Radhika to serve Krishna in his Dwarka mood. But in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we get this conversation where the queens are discussing with Rohini, the mother of Lord Balaram, who is actually a Shuddha Basi, but she has come and has some experience in Dwarka for this particular pastime. She appears as the wife of Vasudeva, but the mother of Baladev, And so Baladev appears as if he's the son of Vasudeva, but actually he's eternally the brother of Krishna in Vrindavan. Anyway, Rohini, she's Shuddha Basi, and I asked Srila Narayan Raj, well, why did she go back to Dwarka then if she'd gone to Vrindavan during the time of Kamsa, but then when Krishna left, she also left and went to Dwarka to be with him there. And he said, to provide some comfort to Krishna, because she's also like a mother to him. He had so much love for her. And she understood the moods of Braj. But she couldn't directly discuss that with Krishna. That would be inappropriate. But she understood. And there's a beautiful discussion where the queens are glorifying the gopis and saying that Krishna, even though he is with us, and we're the most beautiful girls, so qualified, who's more beautiful than us? As princesses, we came to him, and we know so many arts, and we're dressed so beautifully, and they have all the great qualities, extraordinary devotees. But still, in his sleep, Krishna will call out the names of Radha, of Lalita, of Vishaka, calling out for them. And other indications they could see that he doesn't have the same kind of love for them that he does for the Brajadevis. And Rohini explains that. She acts as a teacher to them to explain the extraordinary love of Braj. This is Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the gradations of devotees are given by the instructions of different devotees. Narada is going here and there and everywhere, trying to find out who's the topmost. And finally he gets to Dwarka. And then talks to the queens and tells them how great they are, and then they begin to lament and say, oh, you say we are, but actually... And then they begin to describe Krishna's affection for the gopis that makes him even completely unaware of them. Lying in the same bed with Rukmini or Satyabhama, he may be tossing in his sleep, dreaming and calling out the name of Radha. And so they want to hear. And they're not envious. They're great, pure devotees. They're not envious. They want to know the glories of Srimati Radhika, and they want to praise her, and they want to try to emulate, but they can't emulate completely because the parakiya mood is required for the topmost expression of love. This is the mystery. So, rasa should be considered the main tattva. Reverential moods manifested toward the Lord in Dasya Ras are higher than the Ishvara Bhav of Shanta Ras. Satya Bhav is more elevated than Dasya Bhav. Vatsalya Bhav is still more superior, and Madura Ras is the topmost of all. Just as we see a gradation of these sentiments, each being better than the previous one, similarly, parakiya Madura Ras is superior to svakiya Madura Ras. There are two tattvas, Atma, one's own Atma, and Para, others. The natural tendency to be fixed in the self, Atma Nishta Dharma, is called Atma Ramata, the satisfaction from being situated in the self. And this Atma Ramata, and in this Atma Ramata, there is a lacking in Ras, because Ras has no assistance from any separate entity. Krishna has this quality of being eternally self-satisfied. At the same time, however, the quality of enjoying with the assistance of his pastimes, Leela Ramata, also exists in him eternally. The aggregate of contradictory characteristics is harmoniously present within the Supreme Person, Parama Purusha Sri Krishna. This is the intrinsic and constitutional nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Person, Sri Krishna. Now this is very deep. I'm going to go on, but this is also discussed in Gopal Champu and in Srimad Bhagavatam when the gopis are chastising Krishna a little bit when he returns. And they want to know, what kind of lover are you? And then 4 kinds of lovers are discussed with different qualities in them. And the idea of the Atmarama is also brought up there. Let's see how Goswami develops this. Atmarama means that one who is self-satisfied. Remember, Mahaprabhu discussed this verse, the Atmarama cha munayo nirganta apirukrame kurvyantahai kim bhaktim itam bhuta gano hari. There are all kinds of Atmaramas, and all of them, even though they're completely satisfied on whatever kind of Atmarama they are, according to how you define Atma, one who finds pleasure in one's own self, the body, the mind, the ego, different levels of understanding the self, or one who finds pleasure with others, or one who finds pleasure with Paramatma, right? Krishna is the ultimate Atmaram, because he's Atmaram and Aptakam. He's self-satisfied in himself, but he also has all his desires fulfilled, because whatever desire he has is automatically fulfilled by his own Shakti and energy. So, he's going to explain this. The aggregate of contradictory characteristics, referring to, let me read the previous sentence again. Krishna has the quality of being eternally self-satisfied, Atmaram. Right? At the same time, however, the quality of enjoying, with the assistance of his pastimes, Leela Ramata, also exists in him eternally. Right? The aggregate of contradictory characteristics is harmoniously present within the Supreme Person, the Paramapurush, Sri Krishna. This is the intrinsic and constitutional nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Person, Sri Krishna. In one aspect of Krishna Leela, there is Atmaramata, while in its counterpart, the quintessence of Leela Ramata reigns splendidly to its fullest extent as parakiya Pararamata. The word is parakiyata. I'm going to read that again. I'm having a little trouble with my eyes today. It's not quite bright enough. And this print, I don't know if you can see, it's kind of dim and small. And these glasses, my close-up vision, I've only got these little teeny areas to get it. It's really hard. Okay. In one aspect of Krishna Leela, there is Atmaramata, while in its counterpart, the quintessence of Leela Ramata reigns splendidly to its fullest extent as Parakiyata, or Pararamata. Now there's a footnote for this. This would be, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33, after the Rasa Leela. Kridvatavantam atmanam yavatir gopayoshita reme sabhagavankstabir atmaramo pililaya. Even though Sri Krishna is self-satisfied, Atmarama, still by the medium of his potency of inconceivability, Achintya Shakti, he performed pastimes with the Braja Gopis by manifesting himself in innumerable forms. Everything in this Leela is as transcendental as Sri Krishna himself. In this Leela, there is not even the slightest trace of the illusory potency or dull matter. From this, you can understand that in this Rasa Leela, Sri Krishna's quality of being self-satisfied is undeniably and completely present. Okay. So Atmarama, being self-satisfied, is somehow or other also completely present within the Leela itself. The Leela is a stimulus, right? And a udipan, a facility for extraordinary enjoyment, and he's enjoying with his counterparts, the beloved gopis, right? In amazing ways. And there are so many things that contribute to this unlimited enjoyment that they're experiencing. The atmosphere, the beautiful sky, colored red, right? By the special combination of the rays of the setting sun and the rising moon, the fragrance of the trees, the special singing of the birds. When the moon rises high in Vrindavan, this is described in Ananda Vrindavan Champu, and sometimes they'll be in a special rasa arena created by these columns of gigantic trees and their limbs causing to create a great canopy or ceiling overhead, and through this ceiling, the intertwining of the branches and the leaves, the moonlight is shooting down through the little gaps and falling down onto the ground, and each place where the moonlight hits, it's illuminating it like pearls. So the whole beautiful, soft, grassy plain or arena of their dancing is illuminated like beds of jewels and pearls, right? And they're setting up swings in so many different places. And they're playing with shooting fragrances on each other, beautiful fragrances and various colored pollens from the different kinds of flowers, everything, and playing musical instruments and enjoying beautiful fruits and drinks and sweets. Rasa Leela has so many components to it. And so all these things are contributing, and yet within that, Krishna is still Atmaram. As Krishna himself, he is by his desire, all of this is manifesting. By the power and the energy and the love of Srimati Radhika, she creates it based on his desire. So Apta Ram and Apta Kam are kind of conjoined here, reconciled and together. The aggregate of contradictory characteristics is present together simultaneously in Parama Purusha, Sri Krishna. This is the intrinsic and constitutional nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Paratattva. In one aspect of Krishna Lila, there is Atmaramata, self-sufficiency, while in its counterpart, the quintessence of Pararamata, dependence upon others, reigns splendidly to its fullest extent. So there's Atmaramata and Parama Atmata. Pararamata, dependence on others. A little tongue-tied here. So these two things. And actually, to go back to what Gurudev would always say, God is love and love is God. The dependence on others that is in the heart and of the very nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the dependence on others for exchange of love, to receive love and to give love, that is the very nature of existence, and that exists in us as well. We are minute fragments of the Supreme in one sense and have those same qualities where we want and need to have that love. We have that dependence. We also have a certain degree of Atmarama, right? Teeny. But really the highest fulfillment is interaction and giving and receiving from others, which is why Rupa Goswami, he gives that beautiful verse in his Upadeshamrita, which is Dadati pratiguyati, dadati pranaguyati, guyam akyati, dadati pratigrinati, guyam akyati prichati, bhukte bojayate chaiva. Sadvidam pritilakshanam. That the very nature of bhakti is to exchange love, right? Dadati pratigrinati, to offer gifts favorable for the happiness or service to Sri Guru, to other devotees, to receive gifts in the same way, to speak confidentially about your realizations in bhakti, to hear confidential expressions from your guru and from other devotees about Krishna Lila, about these beautiful pastimes, or in the less developed stage about our struggles and how we're trying to develop and advance. We have to be able to reveal our hearts, our joys, our fears, our happiness, our doubts, right? Guyamakachi Prichati, to someone who can assist and help us, and hear submissively and happily instructions to help us in that way. Bhukte bojayate chaiva, to offer beautiful transcendental foodstuffs that have been offered to the Lord and receive that prasad also. See? This is dependence on others. Bhakti is absolutely dependent on others. You don't just sit in a corner and learn about bhakti. You have to learn about bhakti by exchanging love in these different ways. With our guru, first and foremost, and he teaches us and purifies us and opens the gateway so that one day we'll be exchanging with all the beautiful inhabitants of Braj. Right? But now we're trying to create a community of devotees and learn that art and learn that culture, right? Because it comes from Krishna. It's within Krishna himself, this dependence on others, right? This self-sufficiency and the dependence upon others. And in Krishna, it reigns splendidly to the fullest extent. The summit of this pararamata is parakiya bhav. Parakiya ras is the astonishing ras that appears when the nayak and nayika, the hero and the heroine, are united by rag, attraction, even though the relationship between them is parabhav, bhav of accepting, para, another's consort. From atmaramata to parakiya Madura Ras is the full spectrum of ras. As ras is drawn in the direction of atmaramata, it gradually becomes dry. Whereas to the extent that it is drawn towards parakiya, it attains its fully blossomed state. What is the most singular sense of atmaramata? That's Shantaras, right? And when you see Gopakumar, before he's even gone to the Vaikuntha realm, he experiences interactions with the sages on the upper planetary systems, planets of the sages. Maharloka, Tapaloka, Janaloka. And Jana and Tapaloka, they're engaged in meditation. But they've not awakened the mood of service. And they can even fall into a state of almost like unconsciousness. And they are very happy with that. Very happy with that. They feel that this is the greatest satisfaction. But for Gopakumar, he has aspirations to experience ras, dependence and interaction with others. And so he's drawn step by step, higher and higher and higher. And even the Dasarasa of Vaikuntha doesn't satisfy him. He wants an even greater interaction. He wants the intimacy and friendship, the confidentiality of friendship with Krishna, which pulls him even past Dwarka. So, from the Atmaramata to Parakiya Madura Ras is the full spectrum of ras. As ras is drawn in the direction of Atmaramata, it gradually becomes dry, whereas to the extent that it is drawn towards parakiya, it attains its fully blossomed state. So, when Krishna is the nayak, parakiya ras can never be disgraceful. Whereas if any ordinary jiva becomes the nayak, the consideration of dharma and adharma arises. Parakiya bhav then becomes extremely base. Thus, poets have determined that the meeting between a male paramour and a married woman is utterly contemptible. However, Sri Rupa Goswami has said that although Alankara Shastra has described the upapati as detestable and contemptible, this only applies to a mundane prakrita nayak. No such conclusion can apply to Sri Krishna, who is directly the transcendental source of all avatars. And this is also discussed in more detail in Gopal Champu. The idea of upapati. The pati is a husband, but even above that, and how Krishna, the husband, serves as a means for those beautiful gopis to show the highest form of love, because they give up all considerations of worldly dharma, of reputation based on chastity, right? And performing one's duty. They surrender all of that. Even the idea of their duties to their children and family, they abandon everything. This is to show, when Krishna says in the end of Bhagavad Gita, Sarva dharmam parityagya mamekam sharanam vraja, who is a higher example of that than the gopis? Right? They are giving up dharma to the extreme, worldly dharma, and embracing love for Sri Krishna. But there's no fault in them. And I can explain this. No fault at all. It's not to be imitated in this world. We give up worldly dharma, but we don't become adharmic. It's not that, that if a worldly woman is married to a husband, she can give up that dharma for any other man. But she can give it up for Krishna. Right? But like the gopis in the ordinary sense, during the day they appear to be very faithful and they're doing all their duties, they're churning, they're making patties and all the things that wives do, but their hearts, their minds are always completely absorbed in Krishna. Always completely absorbed. That's what we want to be. So, Vijay says, kindly tell me about the distinct characteristic of pati. Goswami, a pati is one who has accepted the hand of a bride in marriage. Vijay, please explain the characteristics of upapati and parakiya. The upapati is a man who is driven by intense attachment to transgress dharma and accept a parakiya as his most dearly beloved. A parakiya is a woman who neglects the dharma of this world and the next, transgresses the regulations of marriage, and completely offers herself to a man other than her husband. There are two types of parakiya, namely unmarried, kanya, and married, parodha. What are the symptoms of svakiya? Goswami. A chaste woman who has been married according to the regulative principles and who is always absorbed in following the orders of her husband is called svakiya. We have included here some parts of the conversation. Oh, now this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He says, we have included here, actually it's all Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but up until that point he was citing his other work, Jaiva Dharma. Now he's saying, we have included here some parts of the conversation between Vijay and Gopal Guru Goswami, and other parts we have left aside, because there are many chapters about this. Now we are discussing the subject matter of svakiya and parakiya in regard to the women of Krishna situated within the spiritual sky. That is in the apricot lila. Transcendental pastimes are eternally going on in Goloka, just as there are eternally occurring daily pastimes in the earthly Braj, Boma Braj, so there are also daily pastimes going on in the spiritual world of Goloka. The pastimes that are happening in Goloka are seen exactly the same way here in this world. There is no difference between them. They happen in the exact same form within this world because they are beyond the purview of the illusory potency of Maya. Those same eternal pastimes occur on the earth. But those sadhaks who perceive them with eyes and other senses composed of matter, being covered by the modes of material nature, can only see and hear these pastimes as possessing some slight fault, as they themselves are influenced by Maya. So, in other words, because we only have experience of the mundane, fault-filled parakiya, it's very difficult for us to understand, imagine the purity and the exalted nature of the transcendental parakiya. And even worse, sometimes people will try to justify mundane parakiya, practicing that as a road towards understanding and experiencing the real transcendental parakiya. Oh, that me as a man and you as a woman, we have to have this parakiya relationship. And this way, the fear and the shame and the guilt and all these different emotions that we sometimes hear described, the gopis feeling, then we'll understand and experience them, and this will help us understand and enter into that mood. But it's nothing like that. Everything that the gopis experience are pure expressions of the highest, purest prema and love. And they have the same names, these emotions, but they don't have the same quality or characteristics at all. Right? And every generation has people who try this same thing, who say, yes, we should do this parakiya, and then we can understand and become like Krishna and the gopis, right? We'll be able to enter into. But this is unscrupulous people, cheating, ignorant or innocent, or people who want to be cheated. So, fie on that. So, no difference between the affairs of Krishna in this world and those in the unmanifest world, but those who are still covered by Maya will sometimes find some fault. Those same eternal pastimes occur on the earth, but those sadhaks who perceive them with eyes and other senses composed of matter, being covered by the modes of material nature, can only see and hear these pastimes as possessing some fault, as they themselves are influenced by Maya. And he uses the word sadhak here. So even people on the path of bhakti, but not yet completely purified, us, we have this limitation in our ability to understand. We project our own impurity onto these pastimes. Just as like we project our own faults onto others, we see the faults in others that are actually in our own heart. Atmavan manyate jagat, whatever I see, whatever I have, I will oftentimes project and see that in another, even though they don't have that fault at all. So the study, in other words, the study of this Rasa Lila has to be done carefully under guidance, because we always have that imperfection, incapacity to genuinely understand it. So he's cautious, step by step hearing. The eternal mood of parakiya present within Goloka Vrindavan appears to be material when performed within the earthly realm of Braj. But Sri Krishna's pastimes have no connection with matter, nor are they even slightly compatible. However, the contemptible material senses are unavoidable for us. Krishna showed this truth to the Gopas from the spiritual world who appeared with him in this material world. Oh, and there is a little footnote here. What is that about? Here we go. From the 28th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. Thus, let's see. Itti sanchitya bhagavan maha karaniko hari dashayam mashalokam swam gopanam tamasaparam satyam jnanam anantam jad brahma jyotir sanatanam yaddi pashanti munayo gunapaye samahita. Thus, deeply considering the situation, Sri Krishna mercifully revealed to the Sadhan Siddha Gopas his supreme abode of Goloka Vrindavan, which is situated beyond the illusory potency Maya. The indestructible spiritual effulgence composed of eternal knowledge, Satyagyan, has been described to be the effulgence of that abode named Goloka. Completely purified sages filled with prema and free from the influence of sattva, rajo, and tamagun have darshan of that supreme abode within their trance of samadhi. It is possible for liberated impersonal jnanis and yogis to return from that effulgence. However, transcendental practitioners of bhakti yoga, full of prema, upon abandoning their subtle bodies, attain the supreme abode of Goloka. This place is attainable only by the devotees and no one else. This abode of Goloka is superior and more elevated than even the ordinary Parvyom of Vaikuntha. So remember the pastime when the cowherd men were confused by Krishna's lifting of Govardhan Hill and had some doubt, and then Krishna's father had been kidnapped by Varuna, and they came back and told this extraordinary tale of Varuna worshiping him and all these things. And so the cowherd men, they wanted to see the supreme abode. And so Krishna took them to Brahmaghat and showed them one version of Goloka Vrindavan, where he was being also somewhat worshipped in more of a svakiya mood with Radhika, more formal mood, which didn't fit their mood of being with Krishna. It made them slightly disturbed, and they wanted to go back to Braj. And I've always wondered, here it's translated that these were that group of gopas that were the sadhan siddha gopas, right? So this weren't the gopas like Nanda Maharaj and others. These were ones who had come to Goloka Vrindavan and perfected their, they were in the midst of perfecting their lila. The first stage of final perfection is to take birth where Krishna's lila is. And Krishna says, or Srila Prabhupada says in the Krishna book, describing that pastime with Varuna and then seeing what the cowherd men were able to envision, he said, then that conditioned soul, that perfected soul, when he becomes perfected, he will go to the planet where Krishna is performing pastimes and will see him and engage in pastimes with him for the very first time. Very first time. Not that we were once there and we fell down and then we're trying to get back there. No. We were in the spiritual world, but in the tatashta environment, the not fully realized environment of our identity. We're spiritual. We were coming from Mahavishnu, coming from the Father, but we were not yet, we were neither within the material world nor neither enlightened and situated in the spiritual world. And Srila Prabhupada explains that. So that verse is about that. So we will stop here, and tomorrow hear about how the parakiya mood of the gopis is completely faultless. Okay, so let me turn this off. Offering obeisance to Divine Spiritual Master Srila Prabhupada, our Divine Sannyas and Shiksha Guru, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, to the exalted Guru Varga, to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasri Gaura Bhaktivinoda, to Sri Radha Govinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, forgive me for my inadequacies and faults and my arrogance in reading subjects of which I don't really have realization. But I'm reading this to get the mercy of our acharyas, to try to understand what Srila Prabhupada came to enlighten the world with, what Srila Gurudev came to help us understand a little more deeply, just trying my best. Yeah. So we'll stop here. Gaur Premanande Haribol.